I think for me, what I enjoy is the confirmation of a belief system that is really difficult to articulate, but there is a common language that we all enjoy, and it doesn't reveal itself until we go through the process. But in the end, I mean, I know I feel good, and I think my colleagues do as well about the choices, and I think commensurate with that is the confirmation of this kind of belief system that we have, and I'll let my colleagues fill in on the rest.
I think one of the things is we all know how difficult it is to do good work, and so we're looking for things that we admire. We know that every process has issues and problems, and you like to see work that transcends just the reality of the difficulties of a project, that you see really coherent, clear ideas that are strong and smart and well detailed and executed.
Yeah, I'd say in terms of what we were looking for today, I look for a clearly stated concept, and then the why, like how does the way this project was designed reinforce the concept. But to your larger question about what is the value of, let's say, a jury like this, I think one of the things that I get out of it is the world is kind of coming together, becoming more the same. There's a lot of homogenizing forces. So one of the things that I get out of sitting on these juries is trying to detect a certain something that is maybe of the local culture, of the local area, and what is that thing, and can it be amplified? So that's, is there a certain ethos or an essence of a place that comes out in the work? That's what I'm kind of sort of a sub-agenda I have when I'm looking at these.
Well, I think it's punctuated, that whole approach is punctuated by the fact that there are clearly fresh ideas, and I think that's what is especially deserving in a jury of 4 design awards. There are very competent, very well executed, beautiful projects that are submitted, but there's that little edge of just wanting to hang your toes out a little bit further than anybody else that I think is what gets a second look. You haven't quite seen that before, and it's like, oh, that's really pretty interesting. So
I think another aspect is just being on a jury as a group. And I know we all looked at the projects independently and kind of came up with the short list. And when you come together, you realize how many projects that you missed that others understood better and picked up on. And you start to see it through a different lens, which kind of changes. So that kind of back and forth, where you're arguing and kind of working through what your criteria are and kind of working together to understand projects is a really nice process.
Yeah, I would say today it was very evident what projects were done by large firms and what projects were done by small firms. And that's a trend within the industry and profession, that you're getting this kind of bifurcation and sort of larger firms getting larger and then kind of smaller design firms. That's a challenge, I think, that needs to be addressed.
one thing I detected is what I would call an abuse of the word vernacular. I think it is a little overrated, at least in the way it's been used. It's a kind of warm, fuzzy feeling that everybody feels good about. But in the end, it's pretty insincere, at least in many of the ones I looked at. And I don't pretend to have the answers to this, but it seemed to be a little too overt to me, very quick to grab hold of something because it's easy to justify a lot of the decisions that follow. And I would rather have seen that vernacular tortured a little bit more, perhaps, than accepted so casually. Sure.
I think there's John used the term project benefited from a modest budget. And I think that's a really important concept that kind of came out of a lot of these projects is you start to see the restraint that comes out of having limited resources, which kind of forces you to have clearer ideas, more limited palette of materials, more logical detailing, that you can't do everything that occurred to you in that one project. You save something for later. and that there were a lot of projects that, even though they were, modest budgets, they really had high ambitions and met them.
I've never been to Dallas before, so this is the first time seeing it with fresh eyes, and I learned something about cities. I mean, Dallas strikes me as a place of special moments or episodes, but nothing tying it together. So I think when we talk about urbanism in making the contemporary city, it's more about the relationship between things rather than things themselves. And I get the sense that in Dallas you could almost pick up the pieces and kind of shuffle them around and put them back down on the chessboard, and you might not know they've been shuffled, or you might even come up with a better combination. So I'm going to take that sort of that critical lens and I go back and I apply it to Chicago and see how Chicago fares. So it really, it's helped. My trip here has kind of helped me think about the contemporary city and how, what are the challenges in making a great city.
I was surprised at the lack of residency in the immediate downtown. I tried to find a place to get a cup of coffee this morning, not called Starbucks, and I walked until I was desperate and came back and had to buy something at Starbucks. And, and there's just nothing else.
This isn't sponsored.
I would expect there, to be just a little mom and pop groceries, anything at all. But and I think of great cities that I've been to where that's evident. It's almost easy to find those kind of jobs. But there was nothing, and I think if there was anything that the immediate downtown could use, it would be a lot of people, as opposed to ourselves who were just staying overnight, and just more or less tourists. But that's always easy to say. And the city seems clean and vibrant, but it lacks that kind of fabric of life.
You said yesterday we had a really great tour from the AIA, kind of a walking tour of downtown, and talking about the history of the area and all the different periods. And it's really interesting to see what happened here in the 70s, what happened in the 80s, what happened in the 90s, and then what's happened in the last decade is shocking. And you start to see the slow evolution of a lot of, I walked over the whole city, the whole downtown area pretty much, in the last few days. And it's a really compact, walkable city. But what's missing is kind of the ground plane, the fabric. And there's also these really interesting moments of, these kind of sunken gardens, this kind of lower level and some of the upper level kind of spaces. So kind of the layers of the city are really interesting, but the connections are just starting to appear. And it seems like you're slowly kind of critiquing what's happening and learning from it and starting to apply it. So it seems like in 10 years, we might have a totally different reaction to the city, which is exciting to see for my own city, because we have a lot of the same questions and a lot of the same interests, and we have a lot of those same multi-level conditions and some of the same tendencies towards these kind of iconic, well-known buildings buildings by well-known architects that become objects in the field.
That's really awesome. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate those experiences.
Great. Thank you.
So we're free.
Really appreciate it. Enjoy it.